Coffee's for closers.
Right. I don't know what that means. Let's get on to maybe more familiar territory for us. Although I do think that was
that was good.
It was a decent discussion. When are the Oscars? March, April?
I think they're March this year.
May.
It could be anytime.
They're so whatever the fuck they feel like it.
This is the thing. They're so irrelevant that we don't know anymore.
I don't think they're irrelevant.
They're irrelevant.
I disagree with you. But we have a Road to the Oscars review.
March 27th.
March 27th. Okay. So we've got a month and some change. Road to the Oscars review of one of the Best Picture nominees, specifically for two reasons. Number one, because it was just available on HBO Max for both of us. The second reason being that Greg hates Guillermo Del Toro, apparently.
We'll get into it.
Water. Okay.
We'll get into it. Yeah.
All right. So Nightmare Alley, directed by Guillermo Del Toro, starring Bradley Cooper as Stanley Carlisle, a carny turned mentalist who uses his craft as a hustle, and how it impacts his life kind of before, during, and after. The cast of stars include Cate Blanchett, Rooney Mara, Toni Collette, Willem Dafoe, Ron Perlman, among others. So this is the geek thing, because the geek's the dude.
Oh, the geek's the dude. Now you say it. Yeah, I get it. Yeah. Okay. It just took me a second there. I'm sorry.
Right.
This movie was a lot to take in.
So we're not gonna, this will be up on YouTube as well for the video reviews, but spoilers, we're just going straight spoilers. Well, before we do that, just general thoughts, like, dislike.
I like the beginning, I like the end, I hated the middle.
So what constitutes the middle? Because this was a long film.
About 2.5. I would say the middle hour of the movie I thought was basically unwatchable and did not drive the plot at all.
Okay.
So
we'll get into it.
Yeah, and we'll get into that. I thought Bradley Cooper was really good.
Mm-hmm.
I thought everybody else was okay. Cate Blanchett, I really love. It was almost like too much of her like sauciness for my liking, even though I really like her normally. She is good at being saucy. Rooney Mara was a little too emo at some points of things. Everybody else was just kind of there and doing their normal shtick. Yeah. So it wasn't, as much as I like Toni Collette, Willem Dafoe, it's just they're just doing their shtick. So whatever, it is what it is on that end. And Ron Perlman is Ron Perlman. That's just kind of his thing too.
Cast iron jaw. The other person that I would maybe just give a shout out to as far as casting would be David Strathairn.
Oh, it's Strathairn. Yeah,
Strathairn.
He's really good. I forgot to mention him. He was good. He was actually very good in this movie.
He's been in a lot of stuff. He's probably most
really
well known for being. He's in Good Night and Good Luck. He was Secretary of State William Seward in Lincoln, one of my all-time favorite movies. Yeah. And then he's also pops up in a lot of things, but LA Confidential, another film with him. Some other, he's been in a lot of stuff. The Bourne movies.
He's very good.
He's very good, very underrated actor.
Yeah.
So we're going to get into spoilers now. And talk. Well, before we do that, I know I've cut myself off twice. I thought that this movie was a case of good actors acting well. I thought Brad Pitt was really, really good. I thought that
Brad Pitt.
Oh, sorry. Who's this guy? Bradley Cooper.
Bradley Cooper.
Yeah, wrong Brad. Willem Dafoe is always welcome, especially when he's being like kind of sleazy.
Yeah.
And then all three of the ladies, I kind of agree with you. Rooney Mara didn't really do it for me. Toni Collette, she was more of a bit role. Cate Blanchett she was fine. But like I said, the guy that played Pete, David Strathairn, and Ron Perlman was just Ron Perlman, He might as well have been Clay Morrow from Sons of Anarchy.
David Strathairn, just so we say Strathairn, yeah.
Okay, I had no idea. Is that French?
And maybe he was also in League of Their Own. Yeah, he's in a lot of just so many good movies. He's just one of those guys that's just in every time he's in a movie, he's awesome.
And we do have that. That's French. Oh, the French.
Oh, the French.
Okay, so yeah, I thought it was fine. It was fine. What so let's kind of get into it a little bit. Bradley Cooper, the movie starts with him murdering his father.
That happens.
Stepdad, whatever. That's the beginning of the film, and then he joins the carnival, where he kind of takes on the role of sort of being everywhere. Sort of, he's just kind of in everything. He's got his hands in a lot of places.
He's jack of all trades,
master of none. But he does in fact become the master of one. He starts to take on the mentalist, the psychic, predicting things, being able to see things blindfolded, reading people, and it's all it's coded, and that's what we learned from Pete, played by David
Strathairn.
There you go. Who eventually will die, and Stanley Carlisle kind of takes over for him, and then he and Rooney Mara's character, Molly Cahill, kind of go off on their own to the city. They start hustling, doing big shows, and then he kind of gets turned on to doing some sort of private things for money from Dr. Lilith Ritter, who's played by Cate Blanchett, and she's sort of like giving him these marks, these judges, so on and so forth. And he gets he gets kind of hemmed up with this guy who's like a big deal as far as, his character, Ezra Grindle, played by Richard Jenkins. And he's wanting him to make his dead wife reappear. And there's, some tomfoolery involved with that. And then, there's, he eventually has to leave that situation, winds up back at the Carney, and then kind of the movie closes out with him becoming a geek for this other carnival, which we'll get into the geek here in a second. So story wise, you said the middle. Would you say that was kind of like when they went off on their own until the end?
Yeah, when they went off on their own,
a little bit.
Yeah, when they went off on their own, right preceding that was a little bit too much. It was about 20 minutes or so where we kind of knew they were going to do it, and they just kind of kept talking about doing it, and then they finally did it. Thank God. And so that middle part, I felt like, this is the thing with Guillermo Del Toro, is I loved Pan's Labyrinth and thought that movie was really good when I saw it in theaters.
Right.
Now, I haven't seen it since I saw it in theaters, and I was telling Janie while I was watching this, I was like, I wonder if I went back and watched it, if I would still think it was good or not. And I don't know. I have no idea. This is one of those things where, like, I can't tell you one thing or the other. The Shape of Water sucks, and I hate that movie. This movie is, I would say, it's not in between. It's not in the middle. I don't think it's very good. I think it's one of those movies that is like being named Best Picture nominee when Spider-Man isn't. Like, it made me actually matter on that end of things too, because like this movie isn't good at all. Like, there's nothing about this movie in the sense of like, there's nothing about this movie that makes it stand out. Where like Spider-Man, like that movie actually had something that made it stand out, where like the main character risks his life, his actual well-being for things, and there's no risk in this other than he's a carny who kind of knows his fate to begin with.
I think I'm going to argue on that point because Dom Toretto risks his life for family in 9 out of 9 Fast and the Furious movies, and those are not Oscar worthy.
I would say,
I think we can agree on that.
I would say that some Fast and Furious movies are better than this. Plot wise are actually better than this.
Stop it.
Plot wise, better than this. Now, this is based off a book from the 40s, I believe.
Right. Yeah.
And an original, and then there's another movie like 10 years after that original book came out.
It takes place at the breakout of World War II because they make some like casual references to that.
The biggest difference I would say about like something like that is that this is, ridiculous to whatever degree, but people actually did these things,
Yeah.
and so that's fine.
Yeah.
But the problem that I have with Guillermo Del Toro now is that he really loves Guillermo Del Toro and just showing things, overemphasizing things, and making things just way more than they need to be. I mean, that was the problem with Shape of Water. I mean, yeah, I make fun of it being, like the fish fucking movie. That's funny, whatever it is. But also that movie just has nothing going on for like 45 minutes. It really doesn't. And there's nothing captivating about it. There's nothing that keeps this moving at all. Like I watched it because we did it for the pod. If we weren't doing this for the pod, I would have stopped it during it and been like, I'm bored. Like we need to move on. Like I wouldn't have cared what happened to Bradley Cooper. I didn't care what happened to Bradley Cooper. And that's a problem that I have with his movies. I don't think he's very good. I think he basically made one good movie and was just like, I can live off of this. And that's fine. But the last two movies he's done have not even come close to Pan's Labyrinth, is in the reactions I had them the first time I saw them. This movie is not terrible, but it is one of those movies where if you take 45 minutes out, it may actually be really, really good, but I still have to watch those 45 minutes. And that sucks because that was really, really slow and felt much longer than it was. I mean, I took like a 10-minute break in the middle of the movie just to like step away from it because I needed to be like, why is this movie existing?
So just as an aside,
yeah,
Blade 2, Hellboy, Pan's Labyrinth, Hellboy 2.
I mean, we saw Hellboy in theaters.
I didn't hate it. It wasn't terrible. It was Ron Perlman. So maybe he has an affinity for Ron.
Guillermo Del Toro has like a way of like keeping people along.
Every director does.
He's up there with like keeping a lot of people along.
Yeah, he's I think every director has their people that they like to work with. I don't disagree with you that this movie was certainly a little bit long in the tooth, and I will agree that the middle portions had me checking my phone more often than I would have otherwise, which isn't a good thing for a movie if you're not able to keep somebody entertained. But I would also say, I do think that, like I said, I thought this was a case of good actors acting well.
Sure. Yeah.
And I think that part of that, obviously you attribute to the actors themselves, but part of that you also have to attribute to the director. I saw Pan's Labyrinth. I didn't see it in theaters, but I have seen it. It is excellent. I haven't seen The Shape of Water, so I can't speak to that. I think that this movie was a solid 7 for me. Okay. I thought that it was very like moody in the sense that they did use a good amount of environmental storytelling in terms of what the carnivals were like at that time, where they were just kind of a shit show, and they were scamming people, but they were also sort of, like the geek. So we'll talk about the geek. And this is kind of like what the movie kind of hinges on to an extent is, so you have this guy that they call the geek, and he's basically marketed as, we don't know what he is. Is he half man, half animal? He'll eat live chickens and this stuff. So in the first section of the movie where Bradley Cooper's character Stanton Carlisle goes to the carnival and he sees the geek thing, they toss this dude down a chicken and he just freaking pulls its head off and starts eating it because he's addicted to opium at that point. Like that's how they get them to do whatever. And Clem, who's played by Willem Dafoe and is kind of running the carnival, explains later that this is how they get the geek to be the geek, is they find somebody, a drifter down on his luck, clearly addicted to drugs and alcohol. They say they'll give him one job until they can find a more permanent thing. Do you think that it'd be something you'd be interested in? And then they basically keep them hooked on the drugs to the point where they'll just do anything. That was obviously foreshadowing that that's what he was going to become by the end of it. And once the jig was up, on the hustle that he was trying to run on the Ezra character. There's a shootout, he gets injured, he escapes, winds up as a drifter, down on his luck, alcohol addicted, possibly drug addicted. And then he shows up at a carnival and they basically give him the exact pitch and he just starts laughing and says, they say, do you think that you could do this job? And he's laughing hysterically. He's looking all just like human neglect of the hair and beard. And he's losing it and says, I was born for this. And then roll credits. So I think that it's a good expose of what this particular, I thought it was a good period piece.
Sure. Yeah. My biggest problem was that middle where I just felt it was Guillermo Del Toro just being like, I can just make things look cool. And that's a problem. I mean, it just is. And you said it was a 7. That's not Academy Best Picture. That's my thing. Like
sure.
at worst, Academy Best Picture should be an 8. I mean, it's just, that's where it's at. And my review would be probably a 6, because I think the acting, like you said, I think Bradley Cooper was awesome in this. And it's like, I really do. I he didn't get nominated for Best Actor, but he probably could have.
Yeah.
I really think he could have been because he really, really was good. I don't necessarily want to say he's underrated because he's in a lot of things, but when he really needs to act, he's great.
Yeah.
And even in movies that are, like not necessarily considered like, Academy movies, but like Limitless and stuff. I mean, he's really good in The Hangover.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, these are the things where like,
He
that's like one of those weird things where like, he's just a really good actor. And so for him to kind of that middle part where he's just kind of doing nothing is kind of weird. It's self-indulgent for Guillermo Del Toro, and then it's like taking away from Bradley Cooper, who for when he's in this movie doing his thing is great. But when he's just kind of standing around and like sort of just saying lines to say lines, kind of takes away from it, which is a bummer. And this is the bummer for me with this movie because I told, before we watched the movie, I told James, like, God, I really hope I like this movie. I said that. I was like, I'm wanting to like this movie. I'm not going into it saying I want to hate this movie. I
Sure.
said that before The Shape of Water. I did not go into Shape of Water thinking I was going to hate that movie. I really, but there's something that he has, Guillermo del Toro, where whether it's like his own, self-confidence or whatever, where he messes up too much for me to be considered a great director. And because you can watch a Martin Scorsese movie and it can be 3 hours long, but he doesn't mess up. And that's like a difference between a great director to me and a good director. I'm not saying Guillermo del Toro is a bad director. I'm just saying I don't think he's as good as he thinks he is. And that's the problem I have with this movie. It's actors doing pretty well. It's Bradley Cooper being, I think, maybe at the top of his game. Everybody else is probably at their normal game. Rooney Mara is a little below her normal game. I mean, her best thing is The Social Network, and she's amazing in that. But yeah, that's my biggest, is that middle just slowed it down so much that I actually stopped caring about what was actually going to happen at the end.
Yeah, I think just to put a pin in it, Bradley Cooper seems like he's one of those, and you described Jake Gyllenhaal as this like a 3 for them, 1 for me kind of guy.
Yeah.
Where he's going to be Rocket Raccoon and he's going to do The Hangover and he's going to be in Wedding Crashers, but then he's going to do.
Well, Wedding Crashers before he was even really famous. Though.
Yeah. He was on Alias, I think, or whatever.
Yeah. But that was still like, that was his breakout.
Yeah. Limitless are those things. And then he's going to do A Star is Born and he's going to do Nightmare Alley. And he's a great actor. I'd like to see, Silver Linings Playbook, American Hustle. He's been in a lot of stuff and he's done well. I mean, he can carry a movie, you know what I mean?
Certainly can. So he's a star, like 100% a movie star.
Yeah.
There's not many of them and he's one of them.
It's a 7 out of 10 terrifying creatures from the deep for me. And a 6 out of 10 for you.
Yep.